Hi everybody, and welcome to Research Business Daily Report for May the 8th, 2012. I'm Bob Lederer, editor and publisher at RFL Communications. The 2012 election season is just getting underway, which lights a fire under me to find out anything that may be challenging pollsters this time around. Now, over the years, when I've asked that question, I haven't gotten back anything as a response indicating anything terribly disruptive, and that's in spite of rapid technological, methodological, and sociological changes in market research, things that we're all well aware of. Last week, however, I reached out to Democratic pollster Mark Mellman in Washington. He works on 4 to 5 competitive statewide races each election cycle, as well as 4 to 5 congressional races. Mellman has an outstanding track record, and in fact, last year he earned a huge feather in his cap by helping to re-elect Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid in Nevada, who'd been considered just about a dead duck by everybody else. The Mellman Group, in fact, was named Pollster of the Year by the American Association of Political Consultants, and it copped 2011 Campaign and Election Reid Awards. One was for innovative advertising testing, another for Best Campaign Comeback, a reference to Reid's re-election. And in fact, Mellman was the only pollster to correctly project that Reid would win that race. He talked to us about a handful of essential polling accuracy considerations for his clients in 2012. Mark, thanks for sitting down and talking with us this afternoon.
It's a pleasure.
Can you talk about the difference between a private pollster, which is what you are, you work for candidates, and the more visible public pollsters that we're all familiar with, like Rasmussen, like Pew, like Gallup, etc.?
Well, people like us work for clients, work for candidates, work for parties, work for issue groups that have a point of view. Our job is really to help them develop a strategy to further their goal. Public pollsters, their purpose, at least ostensibly, is to help the public understand how people are thinking about issues and other topics, and they make all of their results public. Most of our results stay private.
Mm-hmm. Are the methodologies any different?
The methodologies are, in principle, similar. We go to great lengths to make sure our numbers are right, because we can't develop a good strategy if our numbers are wrong. I think that some of the public pollsters, particularly those that use polling robocalls, IVR polling, I think they have some pretty serious limitations on their methodology. But that's not a function of their being private versus public. It's a function of their trying to do it as cheaply as possible.
Okay. One of the areas that I'm always interested in is how your polling is being changed by technologies, methodologies, sociological type of things. I would think the big change now versus even 2 years or 4 years ago would be the use of cell phones. Is that the case, and how do you account for that?
Well, there's obviously been a huge rise in the number of cell phone only and cell phone mainly households. We have to include cell phones these days to get an accurate portrayal of an electorate in any city, state, certainly in the country. One of the problems that these robo-pollsters have, these IVR pollsters, is they're precluded by law from calling cell phones. So when you see a Rasmussen poll, when you see a Survey USA poll, almost always they're only talking to landlines, and that can present a biased picture of what the electorate's really thinking.
Okay. One of the other areas that people always talk about in polling is finding people who are likely to vote, as opposed to just people you get on the telephone. Is it tougher to find that information out when you reach out to somebody?
Well, first of all, it's tough to not just get a sample of easy-to-reach people. So in addition to the cell phone issue we just talked about, lots of people have a technology that allows them to screen their calls, and lots of people don't want to talk to us. So that combination means that we have to work very hard to get a representative sample. And there's lots of steps we take to make sure that we're getting not just easy-to-reach folks, but hard-to-reach people as well. Beyond that, there are some techniques that we have to use to be able to figure out who's likely to vote and who's not. We are able to look at the voter file and be able to, at an individual level, know someone's voter history. That helps us. There are questions that we ask that enable us to get a bead on their likelihood of voting. It's really putting all of these pieces of data together to give us a model of the likely electorate, that tends to be the most effective, most successful way of determining that.
So the problems that you have as a private pollster are somewhat different than the problems that a public pollster might have.
Well, again, it varies by public pollsters. Some public pollsters tend to look at everybody. They're saying we're looking at all adults. That's easy. You don't have to know who's likely to vote. Some public pollsters saying they're trying to look at likely voters. Some are looking at registered voters. Again, there are different approaches that the public pollsters take. We sort of maximize the problems in our industry because we are focused on the narrowest group of people possible. We don't really, for the most part, and certainly in campaigns, we don't care about people who aren't registered to vote. We care less about people who are registered but aren't going to vote, and we care most about that likely electorate that's actually going to be there on election day. That's the hardest group of people to find, but that's really the gold standard for us.
Okay, let me go back to cell phones for a minute. Since they're so important and have growing importance now, I think 30% of homes don't even have a landline anymore but have a cell phone. Are these people as conscious about how much time that you're taking with them with a poll as they might have been 2 or 4 years ago?
Well, let's put it this way. At this point in time, there's no question. We do the same length surveys with people who are on cell phones as we do on landlines, and we find no appreciable difference in people's willingness to stay on the phone between whether they're on a landline or a cell phone.
Okay. Last question. The new shiny object in research is neuroscience. Does it have a role to play in polling?
Oh, no question. It can have a role to play. We're experimenting with it. Lots of other folks are experimenting with it. We don't have a product yet that we're ready to bring to the market because there are lots of unknowns, I think, still in neuroscience. We just saw this a couple of years ago or a year ago with Super Bowl ads where an ad that the neuroscience team rated the least effective actually elicited the greatest response. Well, if your goal in advertising is to elicit response, the fact that the neuroscience predicted would be least effective tells you there's a disjuncture between what the neuroscience is telling you and what the advertising is doing. So we have to make some more progress, I think, in figuring out the relationship between what's going on in people's brains, the neuroscience, and the behaviors that we're trying to elicit.
Okay. I am going to ask you one more question. Does
Sure.
there tend to be a longer time lag for polling acceptance of new capabilities like neuroscience, like the internet 10 or 12 years ago, than the general market research industry has in the way of acceptance?
Well, I think there is. I think it's not so much a question of acceptance as it is market pressure on the one hand. There's less market pressure in our world because it's a smaller world. There's also less budget. Big corporations that go to big market research firms are willing to put some money on the come and see if something works. Our clients work very hard to raise every single dime and every single dollar they've got, and they're a lot less willing to finance those experimental looks at things.
And maybe a little bit experts on the other side of the table when you're working for a candidate than if the president of Coca-Cola calls the research director of Coca-Cola and says, everybody else seems to be doing this, why aren't we?
Right. And the truth is, when you're talking to political candidates, they're not necessarily, let me put it differently, they are not, in almost any case, experts in neuroscience or experts in research generally. We find ourselves having to spend a lot of time explaining what a random sample is to these folks, because this is not their area of expertise. Whereas the people you deal with on the corporate side, they know about these things because they are marketers. They have some background in market research as well, often.
Okay. Hey, Mark, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Pleasure.
That's Research Business Daily Report for May the 8th, 2012. I'm Bob Lederer, hoping you have a great research day, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow.